This conference will
All
now
right,
be
can everybody hear
recorded.
me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great, people can hear me? Hello?
Yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. We had some real interesting technical difficulties this morning, so I am so happy to be here. Hope everybody's doing well. We're going to give everybody just about another 60 seconds to get on because, you know, computers. So we'll hang in there about 60 seconds, okay?
Okay.
Does my voice sound okay? I had to actually go to a different computer. Does my voice look okay? I sound okay? Does the screen look okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Fuzzy.
Great,
It looks great,
Hi.
Dr. Illich. I can see it too.
great. Thank you so much. Is that Nadell?
It was.
Oh, hey.
Good, good. How's it going?
All right, so my wife's a school teacher. She tells me never to be late. All right, so it's 11:02, so we're going to get started. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Dave Illich. I'm the chief audiologist at Palomar Hospital and have been for 35 years. I need to forewarn you on a couple of things. The main computer wouldn't work, so we've had to go with one of my old laptops. So my slides are moving a little bit slowly right now. In fact, it's not moving at all. Why is that? There we go. All right. So here's me when I used to have dark hair. Real briefly, I'm a California boy. I was born in, my father was in the Air Force. I was born in Victorville, California. Raised in the beautiful town of Long Beach, Mississippi. Got my master's degree at Alabama. Got my doctorate at Arizona. I've been in the area since 1982. Founded Professional Hearing Associate, that we provide audiology and hearing services for most all the hospitals and clinics in San Diego, North County. I'm married to a second grade school teacher, and our son's a third grade school teacher, both in Escondido, and our other daughters at USF. All right, Southern people like quotes. We're gonna go over two of them here. One is pretty old, Socrates. The ear is the organ of education. What we learn is through our ears. Helen Keller kind of followed up on that. She said, our eyes keep man in contact with objects, and our ears keep man in contact with man. And when you lose your vision, it's horrible because you can't see the beautiful colors, you can't see the great faces. When you lose your hearing, you lose the ability to communicate, talk, and share ideas and laugh. So they're very, very different. I've got lots of patients who are blind, and they love to talk. They love to interact. They're very interactive people. When people lose their hearing, it's just too difficult to communicate. So they intellectually, psychologically, socially introvert. Now we're going to stay organized here because we have 121 slides. I'm a Southern boy who's going to try to talk fast. We're going to briefly go over anatomy and physiology. We're going to touch on the types and causes of hearing loss. We'll discuss audiological testing and impacts of hearing loss. And then the most important part is hearing and cognition. We're going to briefly touch, somebody has their microphone on, they're breathing kind of heavy. Could they turn it down, please? All right, now my voice is creating sound waves. And these sound waves right now are going down your ear canal. At the end of the ear canal is the eardrum. It's also called the tympanic membrane. The tympanic membrane vibrates, and it vibrates a very small amount, only the size of a couple atoms. Now, the vibrations of the eardrum make the ossicles, 3 bones in the middle ear cavity, vibrate. Now, these act like a lever, pushing the sound going into the inner ear by 29 times more. Now, inside the cochlea, you have nice, healthy looking hair cells on the right-hand side, and you have damaged hair cells of the cochlea on the right-hand side. Once again, here's a picture of a cochlea with hair cells, normal hair cells, and one with damaged hair cells. Now, the outer part of the head is really not that important. It's It's mechanical. What counts? Everything that we've learned in the last 5, 10 years has to do with the neural structure. Now, I would love to spend an hour or 2 or 3 just talking about all the different places that sound has to go into its process before it's sent to the next place. There's the ipsilateral cochlear nucleus, the medial cochlear nucleus, all these different places before the sound goes into the auditory cortex. And the sound goes back and forth and back and forth. It's just the most amazing thing. Now, bottom up, top down. Now, hearing is bottom up. Cognition, the ability to understand, is top down. Now, when sounds are going from the inner ear up to the brain, that's that's bottom up, and that's hearing. Once it's gone through all the processes in the brain, it comes back down, and that's called top down. So bottom up is hearing, top down is cognition. Now, when bottom up hearing loss is compromised, top down is harder to decode and untangle and comprehend speech. This is called auditory nervous system degradation. Now, when there's degradation of the auditory nerve, it happens primarily in the medial and the superior medial lobes. And this lack of stimulation is what causes auditory deprivation. First place, the little purple guy in the middle, that's the auditory cortex. The first place that sound goes to once it's in the auditory cortex is the memory part of the brain. It also goes to emotion, sound analysis. It goes to 5, 6, many different parts of the brain. But the first place is memory. What does this word mean? So basically, we hear with our brains, not with our ears. Once again, the ear is just a transformer. It takes vibrations, makes them into electrical output. But all the processing is done up into the brain. What is hearing loss? Hearing loss is any degree of impairment to understand or comprehend sound. And hearing loss is as unique as the individual suffering it. Vision is very, very, very objective. You got a 2200 loss, you get on 2200 lens, you see 20/20 and you say goodbye. Hearing is nothing like that. The way that one person wants to hear is vastly different than the way another person wants to hear. The ability to enjoy natural sound, clarity, and such is very unique from person to person. Now, there's basically 2 types of hearing loss. There's conductive. Now, conductive is blockage. And that blockage could be earwax. That blockage could be fluid in the middle ear cavity. That blockage could be damage to the eardrum. And that makes up about 5 to 8% of all hearing loss. And it's medically correctable. There's a damaged eardrum. There's some broken ossicles. So anything in the outer ear, in the middle ear, are classified as a conductive loss. Now, when we look in the ear, the one in the middle is what we like to see. Nice, healthy looking eardrum. The one on the left is a middle ear infection. When we look at an ear like that, we have a bad infection in the middle ear. And on the right is one we see every day, which is just a person packed up with wax. Now, the reason most people are packed up with wax is because they're putting Q-tips in their ears. And they'll say, you would not believe how much wax I pull out. We'll say, yes, but you would not believe how much wax you're pressing in deeper and harder. Now, 95% of all hearing loss, between 92 to 95% of all hearing loss is what they call sensory neural. Now, sensory is the cochlea, the inner ear, and the neural is all the nerve processes in the brain going up to the brain. Now, sensory neural hearing loss can come from noise exposure, where I got my hearing loss was from noise exposure, aging, genetics, and such. My slides are going slowly, my apologies. So once again, here's another picture of a normal cochlea. And then on the right-hand side is a severely damaged cochlea. Now, a lot of times people say, how come hearing aids can't correct all hearing loss? It's basically you're amplifying a damaged speaker. Take a look at that cochlea on the right. That's a damaged speaker right there. So you're amplifying a damaged speaker. The more hertz, the greater the loss, the more difficulty with the hearing aid. Now, there's basically 4 different types of hearing loss. There is presbycusis, sociocusis, congenital, and ototoxicity. Now, presbycusis is a little boat that none of us miss if we live long enough. We all start to lose a little bit of our hearing in our 20s and 30s, maybe 1 or 2% per year, and we don't notice it. But age 60, 50, 60, 70, that's when it hits us. One of the reasons people say, I hear perfectly, my wife and children all mumble, one of the reasons is it didn't occur over 5 or 10 years. It occurred over a 30-year period, and it's called presbycusis. Now, sociocusis, how it damaged my hearing. I wear hearing devices because I'm the oldest of 6, and I had to work my way through college, and every summer I spent on a pipeline with jackhammers and Case 580C backhoes, and strangely never wore ear protection, or unfortunately never wore ear protection. One last time, here's a normal cochlea, and here's a damaged cochlea. Mine probably looks similar to the one that's on the right. Congenital, we are our parents. If your parents had a hearing loss, there's a good chance you're gonna have a hearing loss. And then lastly is something that we do at the hospital a lot, which is called monitoring ototoxicity. There's the gentamicins, the streptomycins, there's all kinds of drugs, over 200 different drugs that are known to be oto means ear, toxic. Okay, I need an answer here. These two numbers, 12 and 38 million, these numbers are going up like a rocket. That 12% is getting closer to 18%, and that 38 is getting closer to 40. Why is that? There's 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is because every single day, 10,000 Americans turn age 65. The baby boomers are getting gray. Secondly, in the old days, we used to have the boom boxes. Now everything's deep insert headsets. According to the American Medical Association, the fastest growing medical epidemic in the country right now is ages 19 years and old with permanent sensory neural hearing loss because the speakers are deep inside the ear. Also in the old days, you might have changed the CD or the LP. Now on Pandora or whatever, you could just listen to it 24/7. So we talk a lot with young people on the importance of never turning it louder than 60% and never listening to loud sounds for more than 60 minutes without a 5-minute break. Now, hearing loss is common. I left a little part out on here. It's the 3rd most common physical condition for people over age 50. Number 1 and number 2 are arthritis and heart disease. Number 3 for Americans is hearing loss. Approximately 12% of Americans have hearing loss. Once again, that's going, oh, I went the wrong way. Once again, I'm on a different computer. My apologies. I'll probably make a couple of mistakes. Okay, let's talk about the degree of hearing loss. When you're measuring a hearing loss, you're measuring 2 things. You're measuring how loud is it? Is it soft, which is at the top left-hand corner, going down to loud. And then across the vertical axis, I'm sorry, going across the horizontal axis is frequency or pitch. Now on the left-hand side, it says 250 hertz and 500. Those are low bass sounds. Ooh, like a tugboat. And you go through the middle frequencies. Ooh. Ma'am, you have your mic on. Who's clearing her throat right there? And then on the far right-hand side are the higher pitch sounds. So when you're looking at a hearing test, you're looking at on the vertical axis, loud and soft, on the horizontal axis, frequency or pitch. Now, there's about 5 or 6 different types of severity of hearing loss, or degrees of hearing loss. There's normal hearing, mild hearing loss, a moderate hearing loss, a moderate severe hearing loss, a severe hearing loss, and deafness. Deafness is called profound hearing loss. Now, this individual who comes into your office will say the same thing every time. They'll say that I have perfect hearing. Seriously, I seriously have perfect hearing. The problem is my wife and my children, the priest and my brother all mumble. And the television people all mumble. But I'm telling you honestly, my hearing is normal. Why would a person with this audiogram say that? The sounds that are on the left are the vowels. What are the vowels? A, E, I, O, U. Ma'am, who just cleared your throat? Ma'am, who's clearing your throat? You have your mic on. The sounds on the left are the vowels, A, E, I, O, U. Now, the vowels carry the vast majority of power and energy of speech. They'll go right through a wall. A, E, I, O, U. But it gives us very little clarity. The sounds on the right are where the consonants are located. Now, the consonants are the opposite of the vowels. They're very soft sounds. If you whisper cat and scream cat, you're going to whisper or scream the A. You can't whisper or scream C or T. You can't whisper through the soft consonants, but that's where clarity is located. Now, this person will say, I can hear really well, ah, e, ah, o, u, but I'm having difficulty understanding speech. They're missing the consonants. They're missing clarity. That person, you'll tell them, hearing's not your problem. Clarity is your problem. The audiogram is that hearing test that we just showed you. It's a very, very poor indicator of speech understanding ability. There's two tests that need to be performed to understand speech. One is called word discrimination score. That's where you're setting the sound at a perfect level, most comfortable level a person can hear, and they have to repeat phonetically balanced words. Now, let's say that a person you're testing gets 100 or 90% of the words. They're going to do great. Let's say that a person only gets 50% of the words. Then you need to make sure that they understand when they try hearing aids, the hearing aid will help them tremendously, but it will be limited. And then most importantly is what they call the quicksand. The quicksand is speech and noise testing, where you're in the sound booth, you have noise coming through the speakers, and then you can evaluate how well centrally can this person understand speech. Look at my little road down there. Now, Dawes that recently reported that about 80% of the time, 80% of the people with dementia had undetected hearing loss. And of that 80%, 87% did not even know they had hearing loss. Now, a recent study I also just saw said that 63% of all people who do have hearing loss don't realize they have hearing loss. Another area that audiologists work with are called suprathresholds. Now, threshold is the softest you can hear. Suprathresholds are sound that's above the softest you can hear. And that's like the hidden hearing loss, ADD, these types of things. And that's what an audiologist needs to know how to be able to adjust. And then we have lots of questionnaires that we work with, including cognitive, tinnitus, dizziness. How is the person doing with a hearing aid as far as improvement? So we do work with lots of different questionnaires to kind of monitor. Now, hearing loss impacts social interaction. What you hear every day is, you know what, I just don't want to talk anymore. It's just too much work. You have feelings of isolation, impaired inattentiveness. People withdraw, and they withdraw slowly. They might cut one or two things out of their life every year that's important to them, but they kind of write it off as that's just part of getting older. The psychological impacts. I've forgotten my hearing aids and been extremely exhausted at the end of the day and tired. Embarrassment. Every person with a hearing loss has a story about misinterpreting something. There's lots of physical impacts, and this is part of the packet I'd be happy to send you at the end of the talk, which talks about all the different physical parts. One of the talks that I gave for Palomar recently was on diabetes and how diabetes affects our hearing. And the reason that it affects our hearing is because the smallest neurocognitive part of the body, neurovascular, I'm sorry, is in the ear and the balance organ. Hypertension, people with heart problems have a lot higher incidence of hearing loss, once again, due to the fact that the ear has a microvascular system. Diabetes, which was one of my last talks. Yesterday, I had a meeting with a group of physical therapists, and we kind of went over this. People with a mild hearing loss. Now, mild hearing loss is 25 dB. You should know what your hearing is. People with a mild hearing loss have 3 times higher incidence of falls. And every 10 dB beyond that, you increase your chance of falls by 1.4. We're going to get into cognitive decline next. It basically goes back to the oldest rule of anatomy and physiology, which is if you're choosing not to use it, you're choosing to lose it. I kept these a couple slides in just for the fun of it, because thank goodness we're past the stage. The mask that we had to wear reduced speech clarity by about 20%, which is 12 decibels. And this is what I used to look like, because it would help people read my lips during those days. Luckily, we don't have to wear a mask anymore. Now to the most important part, hearing and cognition. What's the relationship between hearing loss and cognition? What do we know about the relationships of hearing loss and cognition? What's the link? And most importantly is, what can we do about it? Now, real honestly, we're just at the very, very beginning of understanding the widespread effects of untreated hearing loss. Now, cognition and hearing loss articles, 31 of major research articles came out between the years 2000 and 2002. 30 major articles in those 2 years. Last year, 2022 up till October 2020 up to 2022, there were 453 major articles, research articles on the relationships between cognitive, the brain, and hearing loss. Now, we're not going to go over all 453, but I did cherry pick the best from Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, University of Bordeaux, South Korea. There's a lot of the great neurocognitive center of in Colorado, all these great places. Now, that's a 15-time increase in just 20 years. The link between hearing and cognition is addressed in hearing with the ears and listening with our brains. Now, listening is easy. Hearing is easy. It's passive. We do it all day, every day. We do it in our sleep. You do nothing to hear. Listening is active. It's completely different. It's a completely different part of the brain. Paying attention, interpreting, understanding speech, applying concepts. Now, the ear's job is to give nice, clear, complete, accurate, natural sound to the brain. The brain's job is to interpret that speech, and then to compare the right ear and left ear to give us localization. What do we want to hear? Do we want to hear this person over here? Do we hear this person over there? There's a lot of things that the brain has to do once it's got that information. Now, there's been a change of terms. We used to call it mild cognitive impairment, and now it's called mild neurocognitive disorder. It used to be called dementia. Now it's called major neurocognitive disorder. Now, once again, hearing loss is the third most common chronic disability for people over age 50. About 30% of adults over age 50 have hearing loss. 2/3 of all people over age 70 have hearing loss. Now, what do you define as hearing loss? The World Health Organization defined hearing loss as the pure tone average of 500 hertz, 1,000 hertz, 2,000 hertz, and 4,000 hertz. You should ask your audiologist or physician, what is my pure tone average for my hearing loss? One of the very, very first studies came out 35 years ago. That was Dr. Christine Peters at the University of Nebraska. Her research was in the Journal of American Geriatrics. And basically, she concluded that people with hearing loss people with cognitive problems have a much higher degree of hearing loss. Additionally, she stated that with early diagnosis, and we're going to talk about early intervention, early diagnosis and management of the hearing loss, dementia is significantly reduced or delayed. 20 years later, Dr. Laura Lemke, said that the most important part is early diagnosis and treatment and identifying reversible factors which may not be initially recognized. And the reason that they're not initially recognized is because when you're talking with a physician, you're normally in a small, quiet room. And then again, once again, she said early identification allows the patient and their loved ones to better prepare financially and emotionally for the future. Now, most of the great studies and some of the studies we're going to go over, and there's so much great stuff that's come out of Johns Hopkins. Their first one came out February 2013 with Dr. Frank Lynn. Johns Hopkins studies reports that the risk of incidence dementia became evident with hearing loss of greater than 25 dB and therefore increased with more severity. So that's very important. The first signs of incident dementia become evident for hearing loss of greater than 25 dB.
This is ridiculous.
All right. Now, the risk of getting dementia will double for older adults, and that's over age 50, for a mild hearing loss. It will triple for people with a moderate hearing loss. And for those people with a severe hearing loss, the risk of dementia is 5 times greater than normal hearing. And what happens basically, John Hopkins found is, and it goes back to if you're not going to use it, you're going to lose it. There's actually shrinkage of the brain. The brain is not getting the information that it needs. So what's it going to do? It's going to actually atrophy in the sections of the middle and inferior temporal gyri. Once again, John Hopkins studies found that it's the brain starts to have difficulty understanding speech and will atrophy beyond normal limits of hearing. A recent study basically just showed dementia risk increased by about 20% for every additional 10 dB of hearing loss. Now, Dr. Sharma, she's brilliant. She's a great speaker. She's the head of research at the Institute for Cognitive Science at the Center of Neuroscience at the University of Colorado. Now, here's a little tough concept. We're going to talk about reorganization of the brain. Now, what happens is the auditory part of the brain is not getting all the information. So at a certain point, it reaches out to other parts of the brain for help. Initially, it reaches out to the visual, and then later to the somatosensory. So if the auditory cortex is not stimulated, what it will do is it will send out for help to other parts of the brain. Now, this process is called neuroplasticity. Mild hearing loss is linked. This is actually a University of Pennsylvania, University of Penn Medical Center. Mild hearing loss is linked to brain atrophy. And I hate that they say older adults being age 50 and plus, because I'm much older than that. All right, the Journal of American Geriatrics noted basically it was a 25-year study, over 3,000 participants, and it's two. One, they said accelerated cognitive decline is reported between normal hearing and untreated hearing loss. And two, which is most important, there is no difference in decline between normal hearing and those using hearing devices. That was a fantastic study. It was over 25 years with 3,000 participants. Dr. Deal, and we're going to talk about Dr. Deal at the very end of this topic. Where's the future going with this? And a lot of it has to do with Dr. Deal. In the Journal of Gerontology stated that a 10 decibel decrease in hearing indicates about a 14% increase in dementia. This was one of my favorite studies, and it's on the internet. The British Society of Audiology. Now, that's not a research. This is not research. This is all the research that has been done up to that time in one article. Basically, they state that hearing loss and the severity of hearing loss and the severity of cognitive are linked together. They're directly linked together. As hearing loss increases, the severity of cognition increases, because what's happening is hearing loss is putting more and more and more demands on the brain in areas where it really shouldn't be working. So when you take both hearing loss and cognitive problems and you put them together, the additive sum is worse than the outcome. Once again, they stated that this begins right at thresholds greater than 25 dB. So it's so important to know where your hearing abilities are We've got 4 quick slides on tinnitus. Tinnitus is head noise. I've got a lot of head noise. I got a lot of ringing in my ears from all the noise that I was exposed to when I worked on the pipeline. It's a perception of sound without outside acoustical stimulation. Clinical and experimental otolaryngology found that people with tinnitus have more difficulty with attention span and memory. That one questionnaire that I showed earlier, the tinnitus handicap inventory, the higher the tinnitus handicap inventory score, the lower the Montreal Cognitive Assessment score. Journal of Audiology and Otology, tinnitus severity shows a strong correlation to the extent of cognitive impairment. Journal of Neurophysiology, people with tinnitus have more difficulty with recall. All right, here's the best part. Here's the best part. How to intervene, 2020, and it's been updated since that time. Do you see that stat at the bottom? To me, that's the most powerful thing we're going to talk about. 40% of all dementia cases can be either delayed or prevented. 40%. Now that means that 60% is DNA. You are who you are, and there's no way to get out of it. But 40% of all dementia cases can be delayed or prevented. Now, these are the modifiable risk that the Lancet article came up with: diabetes, social isolation, hearing loss, smoking, obesity, physical inactivity, depression, less educated. Now, of those 9, by far, the highest modifiable risk was treating one's hearing loss. So it is very important in the prevention of cognitive decline to have a hearing test, treat your untreated hearing loss. So once again, it states that people who wear hearing devices have pretty much the same abilities cognitively as people with no hearing loss. Dr. Glick and Dr. Sharma, once again, we're going back to neuroplasticity, where their article goes into the fact that if the auditory cortex is not getting information it needs, it sends the sounds out to different parts of the brain. That's why it's so important that the brain receive information through early intervention. Right there in the middle, people who wear hearing devices have shown reversals. The sounds that have left the auditory cortex come back to it. It takes about 6 months to that process to take place. 6 months after wearing correctly fitted amplification, there's a reversal of the sounds leaving the auditory cortex coming back. Neuroplasticity. This is one of the articles that I'll send out if anybody's interested, and I'll talk about it at the end of the talk. The World Health Organization last year said that a lot of hearing devices are not programmed properly. And the most important part is to find an audiologist who knows what they're doing, who's going to work with each person individually, not just a catch basket, and to basically create a system for each and every person as far as the way that they adapt to the sounds. Dr. Glick and Sharma again, as hearing loss progresses, structural differences in the brain become more pronounced. The greater the loss, the more differences in the brain. The more difference in the brain, the more difficult it is for the person to adapt to amplification. One of my favorite professors is Nina Kraus. You ever get a chance to go on the Northwestern University and look up Nina Kraus? Unbelievable research that's coming out with music and sounds. And basically, the brain knows if it's leaves blowing or a fan versus speech. There is a sound-brain partnership. Dr. Wambach noted that the average hearing loss of 25 dB can lead up to a 29% greater loss than people with no hearing loss. Dr. Yao in the Journal of American Medical Association found that those who were treated with hearing loss with hearing devices had a 19% decrease in cognitive decline and a significant 3% increase in cognitive scores. Columbia University this year We found that people who wore hearing devices were significantly better on cognition and memory tests than those who did not. The National Council on Aging reported that people who do not wear hearing loss have significantly greater feelings of sadness, depressions, and they participate in much less social activities. Also, the National Council of Aging article that came out noted that hearing devices wearers had significant improvement in relationships at home, sense of independence, social life, and their sex life. And I've been so curious on how in the world the National Council of Education found this out about sex life, but I couldn't find anything. So what I did with that, basically, Dr. Glennie, listening is the foundation for learning, which is pretty similar to what Socrates said a long time ago. So what do? First thing you do is Welcome to Medicare Act. Here's the Welcome to Medicare Act. And it stipulates that at age 65, you should have 7 different tests performed to become a recipient of Medicare. Get a baseline audiogram. If you would like, I can send you the Cleveland Clinic How Well Do You Hear questionnaire. But one of the most important things is to get a hearing test. And once again, if you're a Medicare recipient, it states it right there. Now, we're not going to talk about hearing technology at all. All I can say is hearing technology changed more in the last 3 years than it has in the last 10 to 20 years. It's become a lot more complex for the audiologists, but the patients are so much happier, and we do monitor everything with questionnaires. Now, the most important thing is to, right here, Dr. Shin, and this is John Hopkins, everybody stresses the importance of taking your hearing loss seriously and seeking a lifelong treatment with an experienced and qualified audiologist. Getting help for your hearing is lifelong. Hearing loss is complex. It's not a bottle of ketchup. Hearing loss is not a bottle of ketchup. Find an audiologist who's been in your area for a long period of time, who's well known by the physicians for doing good quality work, honest work, and establish yourself with them for life. Hearing aids are not going to give you normal hearing again, but they will make a huge difference in your life. The most important part is you don't want to hear more loudly. You want to hear clearly. You want it to sound natural. It takes a little while to adjust the hearing aids, especially when you have a person with a greater hearing loss. The greater the hearing loss, the more time it takes to adapt hearing sounds properly. And that's where a good audiologist is going to design an oral rehabilitation program for you. They'll do real ear measurements where they put a probe mic right by your eardrum and they measure the sound going through the hearing aid, what's hitting the ear canal. You would be amazed how many people do hearing aids, but they have no idea what's hitting the eardrum. How are you going to tune a hearing aid if you don't know what's actually hitting the eardrum? It's called real ear measurement, and it's the gold standard for hearing health care. Hearing devices give you back confidence, participation in social activities, and what out there is more important than enjoying conversations with our family and friends. Now, we mentioned Dr. Deal earlier. She's going to have a study coming out in the latter part of 2023 that she's been working on for quite a while called the Achieve study. It's going to be the very first randomized trial to determine how well best practices work with cognitive decline with hearing loss. In conclusion, hearing loss has been described as a marker for poor health. Hearing impairment is not good for your brain. Despite the high prevalence and consequences of health outcomes, hearing loss is largely undiagnosed. Probably close to 2/3 of people with hearing loss don't even realize they have hearing loss. Doctors do not regularly check for hearing loss because they can't see the problem. One of the hearing nicknames for hearing loss is the hidden handicap. If you can't see it, you don't have sympathy. You need to mention it to your doctor that you'd like to have a baseline so you know where you are. 2/3 of older Americans with hearing impairment do not use hearing aids. Forgive me for saying this, physicians, and I talk to physicians all day, every day, need to understand the importance of preventing auditory deprivation. And once again, the Lancet study has shown that of all the different modifiable risk, by far, treating one's hearing loss is the #1 modifiable risk in reducing or preventing dementia. Hearing loss is a medical issue. It affects balance. It affects our communication, our mental. Untreated hearing loss is a multitude of different things. Okay, we have our question and answer, but before we do that, once again, we had some major computer problems. I'm actually working off an ancient old laptop, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to take many questions. We'll try. But if you want a packet of some of the research that we've just gone over, you can email me. It's Dillich, that's D-I-L-L-I-C-H, at ProHear Inc., ProHearinc.com, or call me 760-489-6901, and I'm easy to find. Ask any doctor, ask any clinic, look through research on Google. And basically, all you need to say is, I'd like to have the hearing loss and cognition articles, and I'll be happy to mail them or email them to you. All right. Doesn't look like I'm going to be able to take any questions. I apologize. This was kind of a choppy presentation, and it was with this old computer, so I do apologize for that. I hope you all learned something, and I'm really appreciative of everybody attending. Everybody take care. Bye.
Well, that didn't help much.
Dr. Illich, can you hear?
I heard you say it didn't help much.
That
Yes.
wasn't me. That wasn't me. I would appreciate all the literature that you presented on the screen because I saw none of it. So I will email you, and I thank you for the clarifications that you've given me and hopefully a lot of other people about our hearing loss.
Ma'am, were you unable to see the slides?
No, I could not see them, and I can't
Oh.
see your lips moving either.
Oh, goodness. I apologize.
Well, computers are computers. They are what they are. But I'm one of your clients. I'm one of your patients, so I'll get a hold of your office.
That was very sweet and kind of you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Oh. Still here? No. Are you still there for questions? No.
Yes.
Yeah, I have hearing aids from one of your offices. I would very much like to hear what has improved in hearing aids. What are the latest technology that you should look for?
Well, there's a lot to that question. There's a lot to that question. Actually, you would need to sit down with one of the doctors. We have 5 doctors of audiology, and basically ask the same question. And they can basically sit there and physically show you the ability to hear speech and noise, natural sound, directionality, clarity. There's a lot of different things that have happened just in the last, actually, even in the last 1 year. So the best thing to do, basically, I'd recommend is sit down with Dr. Cones or Dr. Alsbury or Dr. Clemens, and kind of go, or Dr. Marin, and they'll be able to go over all the different things that have changed.
Also, the new technology that's connected with hearing aids, like I have this connection to the television set via Bluetooth, but is there anything new in the technology that connects your hearing aids to other mechanical devices?
Well, Bluetooth is Bluetooth. I Bluetooth into my iPad, I Bluetooth into my television, I Bluetooth into my telephone, I Bluetooth into my wife's computer. So it's just basically, if you have the ability to Bluetooth, you can Bluetooth with anything that's out there with just the push of a little button.
With any hearing aid, mine is 5 years old.
I apologize. Ask that question again.
My hearing aids are 5 years old.
Okay.
They work pretty well.
Good.
Is that new technology matching 5-year-old hearing aids?
It's got to be significantly better. You don't want to keep anything. You do not want to keep anything unless it's successfully better. The old saying is the only failure is a failure not to try. And so try it, be pessimistic or negative. And if you're hearing tremendously better, significantly better, you're going to want to keep it. If you're not, then don't keep it.
Okay.
Anybody who makes you a promise on what it's going to do is basically a salesperson. So we do it objectively for everyone.
The basic hearing aid technology, minus all the extras, has that improved? Is it the same like 5-8 years ago?
Hearing technology has actually gone in two different directions. It's got significantly better and significantly worse. But the proof is in the pudding. And if you try it, you should hear. I know when I changed mine to the new devices, it was kind of almost shocking. I knew it right away. But if a person doesn't notice that, then I don't recommend them to keep it.
Okay.
So my recommendation is give it a try and make the decision based off of reality.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I'm going to check out. Thanks everybody so much.